the race to avoid a national power shutdown is on as the Energy Minister John Jinapop scrambles to find billions of cedis to purchase liquid fuel to power electricity generating plants. Now, the Energy Minister told members of Parliament on the Energy Committee that the country currently has less than 3 days of liquid fuel in stock. Now, while some more fuel has been ordered, funds are not available as we speak now to pay for this. Now, the Minister is expected to make desperate last-minute ditch effort at Cabinet to secure the necessary funds to make these payments. We can listen to him in his briefing with members of the Energy Committee of Parliament.
Thank you, Chairman. Today, as I sit here, this morning, my headache is how to get the next parcel of liquid fuel. The fuel we have to take us 2.6 days. We've placed order for fuel, but it has to be paid. We've procured some fuel on credit and working with the Ministry of Finance to pay. But the truth is that the Ministry of Finance also has its limits. And so we'll be going to Cabinet to discuss how we can improve on the sector. And that is why we are pushing for some private sector participation in ECG's operations. It does not entirely solve the problem, but it takes us to another level. Because if the collections are reduced from the 40% to say 5%, it means that we'll be collecting more. Cabinet has also adopted a position, and we'll brief you, Chairman. All MMDAs are supposed to pay for their electricity bills. They have to budget for it. We've identified what we call critical institutions. They include the health sector, the education sector, the security agencies, and the presidency. Even with that, so if you take the health sector, it's the theaters, the laboratories, the wards that will be exempted. If you take the educational institutions, dormitories are not part. Restaurants are not part. Only lecture theaters. And so we've classified that. And Cabinet is granting the approval and will publish that. Even what we term as critical institutions, the Minister of Finance will have to budget for it and pay.
Right, so the question is about what the ministry is doing to, get the necessary funds to purchase the fuel. And of course, we can listen to the minister again on steps being taken to address this challenge.
This year alone, government spent over 24 billion cedis in energy sector. Either you call it subsidies, under recoveries, or shortfalls. This year, it is estimated at over 30 billion. In terms of the shortfall. Yesterday, we had a session with the finance minister, and a lot of the people here were there. We require about $1.1 billion to procure liquid fuels alone. Unfortunately, and the PRC is here, the liquid fuel is not part of the tariff structure. And so you would be buying close to $15 billion of liquid fuel, and that has to be paid by the central government because it's not part of the tariff structure. As if that is not enough, what you call the reserve margin, which is a necessity, because you just don't bring plants to meet exactly what you consume. What if one plant goes off for maintenance or any situation? That is not also part of the tariff structure. More importantly, the tariff itself, ECG is unable to collect all the monies. And so you're having a deficit of about 2 billion cedis every month when it comes to ECG's collections. When you add that deficit and you add the fuel, which is not part of the pass-through, you are looking at over 30 billion. Car Power has just sent us a letter that by 18th, they will shut down the plant because we owe them more than $400 million. IPPs alone, we owe them $1.7 billion. And so it's serious.
The picture the energy minister is painting is quite scary. What I want to find out is what really is the issue with the energy sector that every day we hear new figures of debt. What is the problem as you see it?
Okay, so I mean, I've listened to the minister, and I am not too sure about all the things that he's talking about, especially when the amount of money he is quoting as the money required to procure liquid fuels. And I'm also a little bit surprised that the minister is saying that the cost of buying the fuel is not part of the tariffs. I'm not too sure whether that is entirely accurate, but I will come back to that.
Right.
The problem is this. You know, when you produce electricity, there are various cost centers, and that ultimately goes in to determine the tariff that end users are supposed to pay. The PRC, when they are setting their tariffs, they allow for what they call regulatory losses, which for some time now is hovering around 21%. And then they cost everything, and they say that we expect the distribution utilities, who are the off-takers of the power that the IPPs are producing, to collect minimum 98% of the energy or electricity that they will procure and bill and sell, 98%. So it's only 2% that is allowed as non-collectible. So if you are unable to collect all that 98%, it means that tariff is not covering that. But what tariff is covering includes the fuel. The only problem here is that if you look at the energy outlook that was prepared by the Energy Commission, and that report is on the Energy Commission's website, so you can always check. The projected cost of procuring fuel for 2025 is around 1.2 billion US dollars. But the bulk of that, about 97% of that, is supposed to come from natural gas. Okay. So I believe what the minister is saying and what he's saying is not being covered by the tariffs is the fact that everything has been, the projection is that we're going to use gas. Predominantly for a very long time, gas has been the favored fuel because it's cheaper than crude. I believe what he's talking about is the fact that they would have used natural gas to price, but we're required to get some liquid fuels.
Right.
There's always a price differential, but that's why the PRC do quarterly adjustments. In the next window, they take all of these things into consideration, including whether or not more hydro than projected was generated or not. So it's not entirely true. But the problem that we have is that for a very long time, we are unable to account for all the power that ECG, for example, will procure. It's the same with NETCO.
Right.
So whenever that happens, it means that you are not in a position to be able to go and pay for the fuel, that the invoices that are given to you. And the problem is further complicated when, as we know, the Atuabo plant is having a challenge because whereas in that instance, we get to use the fuel on credit and sometimes not even pay for it. That's how come GMP, Ghana Gas, is being owed a lot of money. But when it comes to liquid fuel, nobody is selling it to you on credit. So anytime we have a gas shortage problem, then government needs to find money because ECG doesn't have the money, or neither does any of the power producers. So that's the problem that we have. Not only are we having losses, but we are also not able to collect enough to be able to pay for all the costs. But the amount of money that I believe the minister is quoting, maybe they need to check the numbers again because it's way, way, way above what has been estimated in the 2025 energy outlook. But there is a problem, and everybody knew that there's always a problem. And if the minister is telling us today that we have only 2.5 days of liquid fuel supply, I mean, I would accept that when he first came in and there was a looming crisis, but everybody had known that we need to get some stock. So it's not enough to say that we have only 2.5 days because at least it's been there for more than a month.
Right.
And it's long enough for him to be able to arrange for fuel to come